Plus, we're bringing you this special program from Saturday, December 6th. Dear viewers, as you know, we witnessed a historic moment today. The International Peace and Democratic Society Conference took place in Istanbul today. It was supposed to last 2 days. The first day has concluded, and you've likely followed the details on your screens. Today, we'll be listening to both the preparation process and the highlights of this conference with our guest. Welcome. Please enjoy the broadcast.
The DEM Party's Foreign Relations co-deputy co-chair responsible for foreign relations will be with us. So let's begin. We know you've had a long preparation process. Today, we saw the effects of that. Well, frankly, it was quite crowded, and the most prominent feature was the significant international participation. First of all, we'd like to hear about this preparation phase, the need to prepare this conference and its relationship to the process.
Well, of course. Well, it was a tiring, exhausting, and enjoyable process, and, like this, the need for international discussion. In fact, for the last year, we've been discussing the Peace and Democratic Society process, but the Kurdish issue is no longer just a matter that concerns Turkey. There are Kurds and their friends in all 4 parts of Kurdistan, in the diaspora, in Europe, and in many parts of the world. Therefore, they're all following this process very closely. That's why we wanted to discuss this process, the Peace and Democratic Society process among nations, with our friends, our companions, and with the experiences of different parts of the world. So ultimately, it's not like this. Or just as peoples have historically been inspired by each other's struggles, so too have peace processes drawn lessons from each other's experiences and drawing inspiration from them. They are also inspired, so we wanted to listen to these experiences as well. Well, in this respect, the fact that an international conference was held in Istanbul and today the world's experiences from South Africa, Ireland, Catalans, oppression were discussed and shared. Their own experiences was really very instructive for us. I'm saying this based on the content of the speeches at today's conference. We have a lot of similarities. What we've experienced together is very similar. The processes themselves are very similar. There are many common points. So listening to them, what do they say? It gave us some guidance. I can say that what we'll do next and how we'll proceed has shaped our minds a bit today. We also see your party's determination very seriously in this process. For example, I understand this from both the participants, your preparations, and the speeches given today. Frankly, it's a matter of defining a political line and demonstrating it to the public. There's a call on this point, especially in the international arena, and can we say this to reflect the process and this necessity? Can we say that Dempsey is doing everything in his power in this process? Your work continues at full speed as far as we can see. So have you observed anything about this today, or have you felt any shortcomings today? On the other hand, peace has 2 wings. Of course, it's not like this. Well, whatever we do, it's not something that corresponds to the problems we face, the problems we need to solve. So it's impossible to say a working practice. That would be, what do they say? It would contradict the real situation. But we are a party that strives to the highest possible level. But I've always said this since the beginning of this process. Of course, one of the fundamental roles of the DEM Party in this process is to ensure the socialization of peace and the politicization of that peace, paving the way for its reflection in democratic politics. So actually, for peace to become permanent, it's very important to take the necessary steps, implement legal regulations, build the social support, and discuss this with society. For example, today, from our experiences, especially in the second session, in the second panel, I think the examples were Sinn Féin or the Catalan one. I think the support of your people is very important. He emphasized that listening to people, no matter what, and getting their opinions and suggestions is crucial for the longevity of a process. He expressed this based on his own experiences.
A reminder of the importance of unity.
Yes, unity. Well, he expressed that he attaches great importance to both the unity of those who run a process, the unity of those who lead it, and the participation of society and, in fact, the public. And we are actually realizing this right now. So, with our work, where and how can we include the demands of the people of Turkey, especially the Kurdish people, in this process? So ultimately, the socialization of peace is truly crucial for us. Therefore, the DEN party is actually approaching this issue from a more active perspective. Perhaps until now, we've always conducted work aimed at the domestic public through public meetings and civil society organizations, but today was actually a more concrete reflection of our ongoing international work. In other words, it's possible to evaluate it as a result of these efforts today. As I said, we certainly have many problems, and we're in a process where working 24/7 won't be enough. Even if we work 24/7, it's certainly not enough to accelerate, expand, or make this process permanent. However, the DEN party is carrying out this process with a spirit of mobilization and has also stated from day one that peace is permanent. The DEN party's determination on this issue, its will, is still in favor of peace. Its stance is still very clear on this matter. Well, because today, that was a very important detail. I think it's something that Imrani delegation member, lawyer Özgür Eroglu, expressed in the morning sessions when we asked what the gains of this process were. At the simplest level, for the last year, people haven't lost their lives. This is actually a significant gain. So we're not talking about something ordinary like that. Building peace is fundamentally difficult. In this regard, leadership is very important. For example, our speaker who talked about the South African experience actually expressed the importance of the role of leaders in this. He emphasized the importance of Mr. Öcalan's stance and the importance of his actions using the example of Mandela. Because while building peace, there's also a need for peaceful leadership.
Yes. At this point, I want to intervene and say this. The message sent by the Kurdish people's leader was received with great enthusiasm. I'd like you to consider a few points within that message. Starting here, because perhaps it's important to underline this point. Well, he stated that I've celebrated the 25th anniversary of the isolation and that he's preparing the steps, roadmap, and perspectives for building this process. So in short, what should we understand from this? So this is an important and weighty statement, and it's important to underline it here in this process. Could you explain what this means?
Well, we've actually been conducting an international campaign regarding Mr. Öcalan Özgürlüğü and Öcalan Özgürlüğü for a very long time, and we've had guests come before this campaign, guests who expressed their desire to meet. I mean, we submitted applications for this, applications that expressed their desire to meet, to go to the island. We carried out these applications. The previous conference, the previous visit to a friend of ours, an Italian parliamentarian, was also in the conference hall today. I had said something like this. Well, on my previous visit, I've been coming to Turkey for this purpose for a few times. We've never heard Mr. Öcalan's voice before. We haven't, and this is the first time his message has arrived. Today, a more comprehensive message arrived, and a friend of ours who was released from his presence read it. But this, of course, isn't enough. So, the detention, that's why breaking that isolation, that's why Mr. Öcalan's emphasis is so vital. Well, we'll go beyond that. Mr. Holt will come directly and discuss this directly with the world's intellectuals, the world's enlightened writers. Actually, at the end of the message, there was a statement about wishing to talk together, to discuss it in the next one. Well, even if I don't remember the exact lyric. So this is important to ensure this in this respect. So that field, that is free work, and that thing, from the moment working conditions are established, Mr. Hokala's more direct grounding when contact is established with the democratic ground of the international arena and the domestic public. Peace becomes permanent, and this, I think, was an important detail. Yes, the message was truly very important. I think he also put a point to many historical debates. He spoke from his own perspective. He
said something important here. You know, the people who participated internationally, whose names we mentioned and whom we followed all day, are also waging a socialist struggle, and they have paid their share of the burden, both with their people and themselves, and they have witnessed this experience.
At this point, there was a sentence that stood out in today's text. I'd like you to consider it. We must build socialism as a social force in the eyes of the people. Perhaps this is precisely the process of a democratic society, and can we say this is what we're trying to build? Of course, this is exactly what we're trying to build. In other words, it's the construction of a common life, a socialist life. Well, ultimately, there's a polarization between societies, both culturally and in terms of identity, and also in terms of socio-economic issues. There's a class divide. This means the dissolution of this divide, the construction of a democratic society, and the construction of a socialist utopia, China. As I said, in this sense, the message itself is very clear and very rich. It's something that requires serious discussion, and I think it was one of the fundamental perspectives that added quality to the conference. So based on this, over time, we will truly continue this discussion. Perhaps it will be necessary to conduct an international discussion alongside it, but ultimately, I'll say it again, Mr. Hokalan needs to come together under free conditions, under conditions where he can work freely with world intellectuals, with world democratic forces, and directly discuss his own paradigm. We need to establish this together with the process of peace and a democratic society. Dear Gunay, you've also devoted perhaps an entire part of your life to the women's struggle. You're also one of the leaders of this struggle. And we're talking about the message sent by the Kurdish people's leader. And there, as always, he made a serious point in all his messages and manifestos. He talked about the need for women to lead this process, Wang Kaya says. And in the message he sent today, he said no peace table without women will ever reach a solution. So, what should we take from this as women? What should we take? Of course, no peace without women is a lasting peace. No society without women is democratic. Notice that in all anti-democratic and authoritarian developments, that is, wherever that social line, that fascist structure develops, male dominance also develops. A male perspective also develops. In other words, it actually carries the burden of women being pushed out of social life and politics. Therefore, women's more active participation in this process is crucial because women can more easily find a platform to come together and wage a common struggle thanks to their culture of solidarity. We've already seen this from the majority of the participants. Yes. Therefore, perhaps this process will be pioneered. So what's happening in Kurdistan, the sufferings women are experiencing when we come back to Turkish cities, the sufferings women are experiencing here should never be evaluated independently of this war and conflict environment. Because ultimately, the mindset that orchestrated the war approached it from a very serious place that also incited male violence against a woman misogyny. And therefore, this whole, no matter where you stand, no matter what political perspective you look at it from, this male violence affects that woman. So overcoming this, spearheading this process, finding common ground, of course, will be the common struggle of women. So the burden is a bit heavy, but I believe we will succeed.
It will continue tomorrow. Is there anything you'd like to add on this matter, or a call you'd like to make? Or will you greet it tomorrow with the same enthusiasm, excitement, and intensity as you did today?
Well, tomorrow we will hold important discussions. And we will be there again with the same enthusiasm and excitement tomorrow. Simultaneously, we will discuss a solution perspective, independent, global experiences. In other words, we will discuss how we can build an alternative democratic society. Okay, so in other words, we will discuss how we can build a shared future. Therefore, tomorrow's discussions are at least as important as the experiences themselves. How will we proceed? We will discuss and evaluate this together. So let me invite everyone who followed and listened today to follow and listen tomorrow as well.
Thank you very much, dear Gunai, for joining.
Thank you. Happy broadcasting.